Hello to all. Today, Elis and I will be talking about our simulation of COVID spread for Paris, France for 100 days based on the paper entitled Estimating and Simulating an SIRD Model for Many Countries, States, and Cities, written by Jesus Fernandez Villaverde and Charles Jones with the behavioral responses suggested by John Cochrane on his blog post, SIR Model with Behaviors.
The model that we use attempts to predict the spread and recovery figure related to the COVID-19 virus in Paris, France, for a period of 100 days, using an iterative process based on state variables accumulated as of 20th September 2020. Basically, we're estimating how hard Paris, France will be hit by COVID-19 in the future. The main equations are beta t, which is the contact rate of the virus relative to the location. This includes a constant value, a, that tracks and specifies our simulation based on the R naught today from the data set. This constant value is important for focusing our simulation on Paris, France. dt bar is the expected number of recovering people dying every day. It is made up of the rate per day at which a resolving person dies multiplied by the number of resolving cases. The effective reproduction rate is the average number of secondary cases per infectious case. Once you have started our simulation process, when the effective reproduction rate is less than 1, we have reached herd immunity. The effective reproduction rate is linked to the infectious rate. Where RV drops to below 1, the infection values stop increasing.
The main state variables that we were given were S, I, R, D, and C. The S stands for the susceptible amount of people that can be potentially infected over the course of the simulation. The I variable is the amount of new and existing infectious people over the course of the 100-day period. The third variable R essentially tells us when a person is infectious at that given rate, the person will resolve and stop being infectious. The D variable represents the number of people that die from being infected. The last variable, C, is the amount of people that have recovered and are immune. R naught is the basic reproduction rate. When R naught is greater than 1, the disease tends to spread greater than it can be resolved. When R naught is lower than 1, it does the opposite. As our R naught value was very close to 1, it was actually 1.0824, we predicted that our infectious values would possibly start lowering very quickly, as the RE values were already included in the 0-1 interval, meaning that we had reached the herd immunity threshold.
Gamma is the rate at which the infectious period of the virus resolves. So 1 over gamma would be the average number of days a person is infectious for. Theta is the rate that the virus resolves completely. So 1 over theta would be the average number of days it takes an infected individual to resolve the virus, in either death or recovery. As we can see on the chart, the number of infected people with regards to time elapsed is decreasing pretty much the entire time of the course of the simulation. That can be explained by the fact that Paris has already reached the herd immunity threshold before starting our simulation. We believe it peaked outside of our simulation. Over the course of our simulation, d bar t seems to be slightly peaking early during our simulation model. As we can see, it peaks around 10 days from start. It then starts a downward sloping quite significantly, with a negative slope similar to the infectious function. We believe that the correlation is somewhat believable since COVID cases are not spiking, causing the number of infectious people to decrease, that this would affect the number of resolving people dying every day as with fewer people becoming infected. There's less total amounts of death. During the course of a simulation, our effective infection rate values seem to be staying somewhat constant over the 0.8 to 1 interval. This illustrates how the city of Paris, France, had already reached the herd immunity threshold before our simulation model had even started operating. Our effective infection rate and our R naught values follow the same pattern, which makes sense since our effective infection rate formula is based on the R naught value. Since our effective rate stays below 1, there has been a decline in cases as herd immunity has seemingly been reached.
So overall, before even looking at the simulation we were going to be putting together, Elis and I noticed that we were going to be observing a downward sloping pattern with regards to our infectious function. This is mainly because the herd immunity threshold for our location, which was France, seemed to have already been achieved. One possible reason for this is that the number of cases before the date that our newest data had been released for, which was the 28th of September 2020, seemed to show that we were going to be noticing a downward sloping trend after the very bad spike that the beginning of the month of September had shown overall in France. However, by doing some research and looking at what occurred in the aftermath of the 28th of September, our simulation model seems to have been quite inaccurate. There are a few reasons why we could possibly explain this discrepancy in our model. The main one is that people weren't being as self-aware during the period of time as they could have been. One possible reason for this is that no lockdown had really been imposed by the French government, as it had been the case back in March, which is why French citizens might have felt as if they had more freedom to act as they wanted to compared to earlier in the year, when in fact the virus was actually spiking at a significantly more important rate than March. Consequently, the French government decided to go into lockdown again in the earlier parts of November, which was enabled which has enabled to lower quite significantly the infectious curve since. One thing that we weren't 100% confident in when simulating our model was the beta value that we were using. Our beta value enabled us to predict what the number of contacts per day with other individuals would be over the course of our simulation. Even though our beta value somewhat changes over time in this model, it is extremely hard to account for the behavior that human beings will have over the course of 100 days, with no lockdown measures being imposed on them whatsoever. Thank you for tuning in.
Okay, so we reached part F at 3 minutes and 40 seconds, and it is now 5 minutes and 28 seconds.
We can't do better, bro.
I think we can. I'm going to read the intro as well, and yeah, because I'm going the fastest I can right now, and I think we can do it.
Okay.
I think we can do it.
But like,
if you're able to speak faster on the end, or maybe cut some stuff out of the narrative part, that might be good.
Okay, but like, he also needs to like understand us. See what I mean? Like you're reading really fast. That's good. Like we're trying to get 5 minutes, but like I think he'll understand if it's lower than 5, like a tiny bit over 5 minutes. I'm sure other groups
I don't know. It says
like
make.
read really super fast. I don't think it's that great either. Like what you were doing was, but like you also have to like think about him. Like he has to kind of understand.
And you process it and everything. I know, but make the video. It just says make the video 5 minutes in length. So
yeah.
I don't know.